exactly did you determine people came and went?
So what we have here is the cumulative totals of 31.76 billion, and it's a summation of over 134 million taxpayer records over that time period. And to give you some idea as to whether they change over time, you can look at it through a time series. And what you typically see is the states in red that are contributing to California stay red. In other words, there's a dedicated pattern from Cook County, Illinois, Chicago, folks coming to places like Los Angeles. And the states represented in green, that stay green over that 15-year time series, are states that are gaining at your expense. States like mine, states like Oklahoma, not just Texas and Florida, but you really do share a lot of wealth cumulative over the period. But if you look at neighboring states, their colors show up very differently because their tax systems on production are very, very different. Economists would argue that why go to Maricopa County, Phoenix, and save 5% of your adjusted gross income when you can save potentially 10 or 12% by going to Vegas or Reno. If you look at carefully the numbers, we see in actuality exactly what the economists would predict, that more people send more money to Vegas over Phoenix from California, and the distributions are quite amazing. There are literally new cities and new economies being built here. Now, I don't point that out to be down on anything or anyone in California. The fact is, we can learn a lot about the migration patterns, even if we go into certain counties, for example. So if you look at not much to show from Los Angeles County, because most of the contributions in green are going out to the rest of the state. And most of what they're sourcing from out of state are from reasonably high tax environments, such as New Jersey, New York, and Massachusetts.
So the highest tax states, New Jersey, New York, Maryland, Connecticut, they're coming here, and we're sending our people, our people are leaving for what states?
Going to Texas, 20% of it's going to Arizona, and then they start in the neighboring states, and then go to Nevada, some go to Washington State, and a little bit of everywhere.
So, again, the study was anecdotal by comparison, because what you're doing is taking millions of tax returns that were one day in California, and then the next day that same taxpayer was somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it just so happens, when you do that, when you do it and use actual numbers, you see where they're running to.
That's right. The IRS and the U.S. Census Bureau is the source of all the data, and they see data across every county in America. And to a large extent, a balance or a credit shows up in one potential move, less any sort of expatriation or late filers. So generally it shows you the big things happening. What you also see, which may be useful for a number of state legislators, are the patterns within a region. So suburbanization, leaving Los Angeles into a place like San Bernardino or Riverside. So it's not a surprise to see suburbanization, people moving out for a lot of the other stats that the speaker mentioned before. Better housing, maybe a different school system, a variety of other reasons, tax factors. We're not saying tax factors are the only factor. What we're saying is it would be foolish to act as if you can ignore them as well. And that because there are big differentials between regions, there will be big changes.
If you're ruminating on thought, and you want to raise your hand, strike right in, especially our legislators.
There's a question over there. Yes.
You're talking about your statistics. Are you elaborate a little bit what happened in Maryland? Maryland raised taxes lower than you did in Florida, and they wound up in the net go up rather than the net gain.
Yeah, so the question was, can we talk about a state like Maryland, which is another state that has some pretty firm policies about what they want, and has also typically felt comfortable and convenient raising taxes on upper income brackets. And what we see represented in the data is that more people are moving. The interesting thing about what you need to track at a state and local level, since tax regimes at a state and local level are variable, right? They depend on a lot of changes, whereas the federal system is very slow and relatively fixed and dealing with a lot, is that you do see a lot of push out of a state like Maryland for everything south, initially Virginia, if you need to stay in the area, the Carolinas, and certainly Florida. And for those states that taxpayers that Maryland may be gaining from, they typically the higher tax states than Maryland. So if you're in a high tax state, moving to another high tax state doesn't seem like a bad deal, because you might actually break even or be about the same. But what you won't typically see is a guy like Chuck moving back, who's once enjoyed a low tax regime and seen how the economy works there with the Texas Miracle. And we see that across demographic segments. And the reason we need to point that out, regardless of where you sit, is to make sure that we're all competing for what works and changing our policies on what hasn't. So in Maryland, another final interesting bit of trivia is that Maryland has a lot of local income taxes. They didn't think it was enough to raise a millionaire's tax. They didn't think it was enough to raise their tax rates. Have you heard this one? They were going to, many of the counties don't even tell you when you move into Maryland that there's a third income tax applied, what they call a stacked tax at the local level. And sometimes that can be as high as 2 or 3% on top of the 5.5% here, sometimes pushing over 10%. And if you talk to Maryland residents, a lot of times that's a complete surprise and a big difference between working in Pennsylvania or Virginia. So you see this around the country. Thank you for your question.
Tell us about the app.
The app is How Money Walks. You can go to howmoneywalks.com and get it from a Droid device, a phone, or Android, iOS, called Taxpayer Data Explorer. It will literally, in the palm of your hand, allow you to pull up whether you want to look at a city, a county, or a state result, and track this graphically, show this for you, the taxpayer mobility that may exist. It'll show you a wealth mode and a population mode. So let's break that down. So if you want to look at a particular county in California, you can go select that county and see all this data that's available, and then drill right in and look at the number of people that have moved in or out on a net cumulative basis to your area. And you can tell on that same app by scrolling down exactly where you're getting wealth from, represented by both people count and AGI, adjusted gross income, and where you're losing people to. So at a very minimum, it can be very useful just to prove how people and their wealth are moving around, even within your region, even if that's from one county to the next.